Hello, Dawn Moore at Allegiance Title Company. Today I want to address a couple more questions that have come in on these new TRID closing processes. The first question is, why are we still seeing both the buyer and seller sides on the same closing disclosure? I thought with the new regulations, if you had the buyer, you wouldn't see the seller side and vice versa. First, you need to understand that these are not new regulations. The CFPB, under the TRID closing process, is simply enforcing the 1999 Gramm-Leach-Bliley Privacy Act. They say that under that Privacy Act, we can only deliver confidential information to parties to whom it belongs to, or to parties necessary to the transaction. Some lenders and some title companies are taking the position that what the seller nets on a closing statement is really not necessary for the buyer to have. Some lenders are saying that for the seller to see what the buyer pays at closing is irrelevant, so they keep them separate. Other lenders don't have that same policy and procedure, and many lenders are requiring us to provide them a complete copy of the CD with both buyer and seller sides on it. Then they plug in their numbers on the buyer side, and then they send that out to the buyer. They won't provide the buyer CD until they have the seller CD complete. It just depends on the lender's policies and procedures that they have adopted internally. If that lender has that policy, you will get both the buyer and the seller CD on the same form. With regard to the next question, it says, should the sellers, in addition to the realtors, be allowed to call the lender for verification of closing on time? Example, nervous seller or micromanager seller. Actually, the answer to this question is yes. The seller has always had the right under our current third-party financing addendum for credit approval, and will have the authority or the permission under the new third-party financing addendum to call the lender and ask about the status of financing approval. Under the old form, right above the signature line, there is a statement that says, "Buyer hereby authorizes any lender to furnish to the seller or buyer or their representatives information relating solely to the status of credit approval of buyer." If you are now using the new form, which was just adopted on November 2nd by the Commission but is now available on ZIP forms for you, in the third-party financing addendum, this is the authority given the seller. It says, "Buyer authorizes buyer's lender to furnish to seller or buyer or their representatives information relating to the status of the approval for the financing." The answer to that question is yes, the seller has the right, has been given permission by the buyer to call their lender and check on the status of financing. I hope these two questions may have been something you've been wondering about, and I've answered them for you. Allegiance Title wants to be your resource for results. Thank you.